Every week, there seems to be a new hot take about Claude Code and Codex. It's over. Claude is cooked. Codex is king. Claude's back on top. Now Cursor just changed the game. GPT just killed everything. Opus is back. Composer 2.5 is suddenly worth it. Another week, another headline. And if you're actually trying to work with these tools, that creates a weird pressure to try to figure out the right answer. Which one should you actually commit to? Which subscription are you actually buying? Which one is secretly falling behind and leaving you out? I get why people ask that. I ask it too. The FOMO is real. But the more I use these tools, the less I think it's possible to decide a clean winner and loser. And I think we're kind of asking the wrong question altogether. The question isn't which model is smarter today. The question is what would happen to the way that I work if I had to make a change? If I've gone all in on a tool, then the cost to switch is more than just a number in my bank account. So yes, we're going to talk about Claude Code and Codex, but we're going to ask the question that actually matters in an environment where things are changing this fast. But hey, before we do that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We'd love to have you along for the ride with us. And please also like the video and leave a comment. It helps me know what kind of content you'd like to see on the channel. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this subject today. Now, the truly annoying thing about trying to compare Codex and Claude Code is that both of them are really, really good. I can work in Claude, I can work in Codex, and actually I work in both every day. The differences are real, but they're not nearly as dramatic as the internet wants them to be. Right now, switching between Codex and Claude feels a little bit like driving somebody else's car. If you know how to drive, you can drive it. I mean, it might take a second to figure out where the wipers are and how the mirrors adjust and why this person has their seat in this deeply offensive position, but you're not starting from scratch. These are two very similar tools with very similar capabilities that take just a minute to readjust and get comfortable with. To me, it's mostly a matter of comfort. So instead of asking which one permanently wins this battle, I think it's more useful to ask where each one fits in the way you work. And that's what I'm going to share with you from my perspective. But I have to give you a huge caveat here because my setup is not a neutral lab test. A lot about the way I work was originally built in Claude's world. Most of my skills, my memory system, many of just my personal habits, and then the procedures that I do were all authored and set up by Claude in Claude. So Claude has a major home field advantage in my existing setup. And no matter how hard I try to de-Claude my life, he's still just kind of like my favorite hoodie. Like sometimes it just feels good to be in what makes you the most comfortable. So when I say that Claude feels better at certain things, part of that might be Claude, and part of that might just be that that was where I built the system first. But despite that home field advantage, the visiting team is definitely catching up. For how I work currently, here's my take on Claude versus Codex. Claude still feels a little better to me when the work is visual and creative or design heavy. If I'm working on a web design, Claude has a better chance of getting close to what I want on the first pass and is less likely, I think, to generate the same sort of AI slop design every time. It also still feels better at running all of my existing skills, but like I said, that's purely based on the fact that they were built in Claude. So it seems like no matter how many times I tell Codex to go find all my Claude skills and make them Codex skills, it still just doesn't really work. Like I can run them in Codex, but they don't populate as proper slash commands. I have to tell it, go execute this skill. And that's kind of annoying. I also really like the agents workspace that Claude recently introduced in the CLI. I have tried so hard to make myself work in other environments, in Claude Desktop or in Discord, or in this really cool command center dashboard I made for myself that even works on my iPad. But no matter what I do, I just keep finding myself back in the terminal. And Claude Agents is a really great way to stay on top of what's going on there. There are other small interface details that matter to me when I'm working too. For example, when you rename a session in Claude, that name stays visible on the chat box all the time. But in Codex, the name is at the top of the thread, so that once the thread scrolls, it's kind of gone. And that may sound like a minor quibble, but when you're working across 3 or 4 terminal sessions, trying to keep them all straight, it really matters. In that specific workspace, Claude Code still feels easier for me to stay oriented to all the different contexts. On the other hand, Codex feels better to me when the work has to actually leave the chat box. If the agent needs to move through the machine, auth into an app, touch files, run commands, or verify the state of something, Codex seems to feel a little lower friction to me. And maybe it's just wishful thinking, but I feel like computer and browser use are faster and more capable with Codex. Codex also seems to be better at being able to clear auth and actually do stuff. And even though this could change tomorrow, right now I think Codex's desktop app and mobile apps are better than Claude's. The more I work in Codex desktop, the more I like it. And that is something that I could never say about Cowork, no matter how hard I tried. Now, that doesn't mean that Codex shoots higher in every capability, but as a product surface that I actually live in, Codex just feels better to me right now, to the point that I've made Codex my daily driver now. For me, it's also about more than just the model. The relationship with the entire product and ecosystem really matters too. And as you probably know, Anthropic has started messing around with subscription access in ways that make Claude a little harder to trust right now. I can't build my work around a tool that might suddenly become dramatically more expensive or less available. For example, I had gone all in on Hermes and got everything working just like I wanted it to right before Anthropic pulled the plug on third-party harnesses, and it really stung to untangle myself from all that work to integrate that I had just done. No matter how brilliant a model might be, if the company yanks the rug out from under the way you actually work, that makes it pretty hard to stay committed to. And that's exactly why I think we're seeing such a mass exodus to Codex lately. OpenAI, for now, seems to have decided to keep playing nicely with the third-party harnesses and the tools we actually work with, while Anthropic seems to have decided that they'd like to own it all. Now, that could change tomorrow, but that's how it stands right now. But all of that just proves the bigger point of this video. If a pricing page or a subscription rule can force you to rethink your whole workflow, then your workflow is too tightly coupled to one vendor in the first place. And that is my real answer to the Claude Code versus Codex debate. Use them both. I have things that I like to do with Claude, and I have other things that I like to do with Codex, but none of that should become a religion. What you really need is flexibility. The whole landscape of the market necessitates it because the gaps between the different tools are collapsing more and more every day. OpenAI is making Codex do all the things that Claude Code was doing. Anthropic is making Claude Code do all the things that Codex is doing. Both of them are trying to absorb what the harnesses like OpenClaw and Hermes had been doing. And they're building interfaces to compete with harness-first companies like Cursor. And at the same time, those harness-first companies are moving in the other direction. They're adding more agent capabilities and in-house models and more of the things that used to belong to the big model labs. Composer 2.5 is a great example of that. It's a harness-first company producing a model that people are taking seriously for agentic coding work, and it carries a potentially much lower price tag. If you're someone who just got burned by Anthropic, that suddenly becomes a pretty compelling option. Now, every new model announcement doesn't mean that the old leaders are dead. It just shows us that this whole industry is changing rapidly all the time. The agent labs are building harnesses, the harness companies are building agents, the IDEs are becoming agent platforms, the agents are becoming operating surfaces. If you switched your whole workflow every time a new update supposedly killed the competition, man, you'd have whiplash and you would never get any actual work done. In a landscape that changes this quickly, your greatest asset isn't going to be squeezing out that last 1% of performance by being on today's best agent. Your greatest asset is going to be flexibility. This is where I think a lot of people still go wrong. When it comes to which agent you use, you don't want a marriage, you want an open relationship. You want a system that works for you regardless of which model is currently powering it. Because if the durable parts of your work are trapped inside one agent, one chat history, one product's memory, or one vendor's tools, then you are fragile. So, what does that actually mean for the way that you work? Well, the way that I think about it, it means keeping your workspace in layers. The first layer is the work layer. Files, repos, browser sessions, drive folders, APIs, credentials, dashboards, documents, deliverables. This is the place where you want the AI to actually be doing the work. And then second, you have the procedure and memory layer. Skills, playbooks, prompts, indexes, routing rules, checklists, verification habits. This is the place where the AI learns how you want the work to be done. And then third, you have the agent layer, which is whoever jumps in and drives the system. Claude, Codex, Cursor, Gemini, or whatever comes next. The agent layer should be replaceable. Now, that doesn't mean that all agents are identical, because they're not. It just means that your system shouldn't fall apart every time you change drivers. Your files shouldn't belong to Claude. Your procedures shouldn't belong to Codex. Your memory shouldn't be trapped in Cursor. Those things should belong to you. Now, agent-agnostic has become quite a buzzword in the last couple of weeks, and for good reason. But it doesn't mean that every agent is equally good for you and the way that you work. That would be ridiculous. It's totally reasonable for you to have your preferences. Heck, that might be the only way you can get any actual work done, by having a preference and sticking with it for a while. Agent agnostic just means that the durable parts of the way that you work with AI live outside the agent. Your files are in normal places. Your procedures are written down in a way that every agent can read and execute. Your outputs have prescribed landing places. Your memory isn't just 1,000 chat threads. It's a documented system. Your auth and tooling setups are discoverable. Your verification preferences are explicit. Then you can route any task to the agent that's best suited for it, and it just works. That's the way that my system works. In my world, I call my shared memory system Cortex. And skills are the playbooks for reusable procedures and retrieval patterns inside the Cortex. Files and deliverables live in normal folders, and Claude and Codex and Cursor can all interact with the same underlying work. Not because my setup is perfect, just because I don't want to rebuild my life every time a lab changes their pricing structure. Don't marry the tool, marry your system. Today, I was working on a web design for a company that I work with. I had Codex go research competitors, plan the structure, tell me what copy needed to exist on the website, and write a handoff brief. But then I spun up Claude Code to actually pick up that brief and do the actual design and copywriting work. That wasn't because I was trying to prove a point for this video. That was just the right routing for the job at the time. One agent shaped the strategy, the other agent executed the creative. And that all works because the continuity for my work doesn't live inside the agent, it lives inside the system. So, in the never-ending saga to answer the question, should I be working in Codex or in Claude Code? I think the definitive answer is yes. The opportunity to gain a durable advantage is not in picking the right agent today. It's in building a system that works with whichever agent you choose tomorrow. Don't be loyal to the agent, be loyal to the system. Hey, if you want to keep learning more about how to make your system work for you, then you're in the right place. Let me know what you want to learn next, and I'll do my best to make it happen. And I'll see you back next time.